Let's go back to the debate in hand here this afternoon. It is that of climate protesters blocking parts of the M25 for a second time in 3 days. Insulate Britain, which is demanding government action on home insulation, stop traffic at 2 sections of Britain's busiest motorway. They targeted junction 23 in Hertfordshire and the main carriageway from junction 8 at Reigate to junction 9 at Leatherhead, both in Surrey. Demonstrators sat in the road, causing huge queues of traffic, and at least 32 arrests were made. A crash has also been blamed on the protests involving 4 vehicles that led to a woman in her 50s being airlifted to hospital with serious injuries. Surrey police have said the investigation into that collision is ongoing, adding it's too early in the investigation to know if these 2 incidents were linked. Let's speak with Liam Norton, spokesperson for Insulate Britain, and Mick Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Afternoon to you both. Liam, afternoon first. I mean, listen, everybody, the right to protest, enshrined in our DNA. I think everybody agrees with that. But gluing yourself to the M25, not the best day out for you guys, was it?
No, I agree with you. It certainly wasn't the best day out.
Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the best day out. I agree.
Okay. You don't want to embroider on that answer at all.
Well, I mean, you've asked me a question,
yeah,
and like I've answered it. It wasn't.
Yeah, Liam, you know what I'm asking you. Don't be facetious. Just get on with it and answer the question.
What would you like to know?
Well, do you reckon it was a good and a successful protest in terms of advancing your cause?
Well, the campaign's ongoing. And what we'd like to say to the government is what we're offering is a serious way out of this crisis that we find ourselves in. Now, you have to accept that there's an emergency and a crisis. And what we, you don't have to listen to us to accept that, okay? You can listen to people like Sir David King. He's the former chief scientific advisor to the British government during the Blair and Brown years. An incredibly capable guy, right, this person. And he said, what we do in the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity, Ian, right?
Which is lucky, Liam, that is happening, isn't it? I mean, you must be, looking at this government thinking, wow, a government's moving faster on this than probably many others around the world, and certainly any existing one we've had in this country. The boilers, the cars, the diesel, the petrol, the greenhouse initiatives, COP26 coming our way on these very shores, Liam. I mean, this is leaps and bounds over anything we've seen before.
Yeah, but the point is, though, Ian, you're not emotionally connecting with what I've just said.
Well, you want me to cry?
No, but what I want you to do is connect to the emotional, consequences of what he is saying in that statement, right? Yeah. Now, there's another establishment figure, okay, who's called Sir James Bevan. He's the chief executive of the Environment Agency.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
A very well-respected government agency, and this is what he said to the National Association of Insurers. He said that the extreme weather events that we're currently experiencing in the UK are worst-case scenarios. Okay. It's going to take many, many years to turn this around, and there's lots of evidence to suggest that we're at the tipping point of whether we, do this successfully or not. And we're not talking about penguins and polar bears here. What we're talking about is the destruction of the very fabric of our society, and that includes the economy that we all rely on. Okay, so what we're talking about in Insulate Britain is we've got a plan to get on with the job. That's what we're talking about.
I mean, the government would, if the government were here now, if the environment is there, they'd say, well, we are getting on with the job and we're doing loads.
I completely agree.
So that's good, isn't it? They're doing. So why are you on the M25 then, Liam? Why are you gluing yourselves to the tarmac? What's that all about? Inconveniencing half the nation.
I'd love for you to get some government ministers on and explain why they're criminally negligent in terms of looking after the British people.
Okay.
Ordinary people have left with no other option. But look, we've got a plan to get out of this.
Well, you say ordinary people. It's a very tiny amount of people that share your worldview.
Well, there's only a small amount of people.
Okay, is gluing yourself to the M25 the best way to do this?
Well, look, we've got a plan, Ian, right? We're coming up with a realistic plan to get out of it. And what we're saying is it gives you the best value for money in terms of reducing emissions, right? It's going to provide hundreds of thousands of proper jobs. So it's going to be a boost for the economy.
All right.
And it's going to stop thousands of our pensioners
from
dying in their beds because they can't afford
we're going to be
to
dying
heat
in
their
our
homes
because they can't afford to heat their homes.
They can't afford to heat their homes. 8,500 people died last year because of fuel poverty. 4 million people in the UK are living in fuel poverty. It's an absolute disgrace.
So now, I mean, those figures haven't changed for about 50 years. I understand that, and it's not good. It's not a good look, but I mean, that's almost a separate campaign. Mick Neville, you're a retired cop, senior level. What do you make of the manner of the protest? That, you know, even if you concur with much of what Liam said in terms of the reasoning, the manner of the protest in blocking the M25. Afternoon to you, Mick.
Good afternoon. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, if you said to anybody, if you lie on the M25, is that going to cause an accident? Any reasonable person would say yes. And now we've got a woman seriously injured. And it's not only that, it's all the people who've been stopped from going to work, the people who've been waiting for months for a hospital appointment who've missed it, kids trying to get to school who've been, because of these lockdowns, haven't had proper schooling. And all this does, if Liam thinks that any of this will generate any extra support apart from the sort of fanatics, it won't generate any support at all. And most people can look out of the window and see that the weather's not changed in the 50-odd years I've been alive. You know, sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's cold. And these extreme weathers, there's floods here and floods, you know, there's floods when I was a kid and floods now.
I mean, there's a good point.
We keep being told all this.
Yeah, there's a good point.
We keep being told all this.
Yeah, Liam, there's a good point here, isn't it, the mixed race? I mean, parcel of protest is to get people on side. You're not doing that.
Well, I think it's interesting where Mick's coming from, because the people that live next to Tower Bridge would have looked out the window and seen it flooding. And the Tower Bridge was shut the other day because of extreme flooding on Tower Bridge. So, yeah, they will look out the window and see flooding.
Well, does that mean every time there's a flood or a drop of sunshine, you're going to attribute it to climate change?
Yeah, well, what it is it's like the extremity and the amount of times that it happens. That's what climate change does. Okay. It increases the frequency.
But do you think you win people over, which was implicit in what Mick was saying, in doing what you did on the M25? Have you got more supporters today than you had last week?
What we're saying to the government is that they need to get on with the job and insulate Britain. As soon as a meaningful statement is made by the government, they're going to start looking after the British people. We'll get off the roads immediately.
I mean, they would say they're doing all of that. I mean, Mick Neville, again, it comes back. There is the issue of protest. I'm sure in your policing career, this crossed your desk on more than one occasion. It is tricky, the right for people to protest. We all kind of support the spirit of that. But impeding everybody else is where the whole subject becomes a fairly grey area, Mick.
I absolutely agree. So people should have the right to protest. And Liam can march around Hyde Park all he wants with a big sign saying, I believe in climate change. I don't believe it, but he's got the right to tell us what he thinks. And so, yes, you have the right to protest, but the moment you step over the line and start causing danger, you start causing massive inconvenience to thousands of other people, somebody's got to do something about it. And the police at the moment are not robust enough. What happened, and I'll continually say this, when I joined the police, I joined from the army. Half the recruits are ex-soldiers. Now they recruit from universities, the senior officers, there's hardly any ex-forces amongst the senior officers. It's a liberal elite in charge of the police. And too many of the officers and too many of the senior officers, they empathise more with Crispin and Annabelle, who are gluing themselves to the floor, rather than Sharon and Gary, who want to get to work and do a decent day's work. And their emergency is not some 50 years' time what the wind's going to be doing. It's feeding their family and getting that hospital appointment right now.
Liam,
people are suffering because of this ridiculous nonsense.
Liam, respond to that, to what Mick just said.
Well, Mick's trying to create stereotypes, which is fine, but I'm an electrician, I'm a builder, and a few years ago, Mick, I was on building sites, mate, right? So what you're talking is just not the reality. There was a builder that was interviewed on the road yesterday who's taking part in this action, right? And you talk about feeding families. And when like Sir David King and James Bevan are talking about 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity, and that we're seeing worst case scenarios, what that means, mate, right, Mick, and I appreciate that it's really difficult to accept this emotionally, but what it means is that people that have got families now are going to struggle to feed their kids.
All right, okay, on that point, Liam, Mick, thank you guys. We hit the clock. You heard two arguments there. Who do you concur with? Lines open now, 0344 499.